Andra?
We are talking Flee the Light. And this one is directed by first-time feature director Alexandra Senza and first-time screenwriter Jennifer Mancini. Now this movie focuses on two sisters as they are, have a pretty good relationship, but one of them seems to have attracted some type of otherworldly presence. And this kind of entity, this presence, is of malicious intent, shall we say. And it's affecting one of the sisters. And the other one kind of puts it down to she's having some type of mental breakdown, as you kind of normally do in these sort of movies. But we know the truth. And there seems to be some connection between this coven of witches and maybe even some type of demonic kind of presence. And as the film progresses, we learn that there obviously this presence has designs on both the sisters, and what they do to kind of prevent this, how they kind of fight this evil presence. Well, you have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what I think works with Flee the Light. Okay, so this one movie, I would say's biggest attribute is the two sisters themselves. First of all, I think the acting. I think these two actresses who play these two sisters, I think do an absolutely excellent job of genuinely portraying a kind of familial bond. The way they kind of act together, they seem so naturalistic, and I think their portrayal of these kind of these siblings who are different, but they still do have a kind of a similar through line, if that makes sense. I think it's very, very, very well acted. And I have to say as well, the casting of these two sisters, although they're obviously completely unrelated actresses, they still have a kind of somewhat of a similar vibe in regards to the way they look. So again, I thought the casting was pretty good to have these these two actresses who kind of, you would not, if someone said they were sisters, you wouldn't kind of dismiss it. And I'm a huge fan of having good characterizations in movies. And again, with these two kind of sisters, I think the characters are well developed. You kind of get a good sense of kind of who they are. They have a lot of similarities, but there are differences between them. One of them is a much more of a more kind of forward-thinking and kind of stronger character, whilst the other one's a little more passive. But we get a good sense of kind of who they are, and that's honestly the best thing I can say in regards to this movie. Is the movie ultimately focuses on these two characters, so we spend a good time with them. So having well acted, well cast, and well kind of written characters is a good plus to have. To be honest with you, in regards to the plot, I would say there are some good ideas here. Having this kind of evil kind of entity being related to some type of ancient kind of paganish style kind of coven, it's an interesting one. And I think the concepts of obviously majority of evil demons in films, it's all about kind of like what's in the dark. But here there's an element which is kind of like, maybe there's something possibly wrong with the light. But let me just kind of pivot to what I think is the problem here with that particular kind of situation. Not as much is done with it. Flee the Light sounds like it would be some type of flipping the genre on its head, where the evil entities can only survive in the light and not in the dark, and it's not really kind of like that at all. It's a concept where I feel it's kind of touched on, but it's ultimately wasted. I feel the movie is very workmanlike. Now, I don't necessarily mean this is necessarily bad, but it's very kind of mediocre. Now, I'm not sure if you'll know what I mean when I say this, but this movie screams like it was come from Canada. This really feels like a Canadian production, and it is, but it just feels like it. I'm not sure how many of you will understand what I mean by that, but when you watch as many films as I do, you can kind of see the kind of the way these kind of films are portrayed, the special effects and things like that, the cheapness of it. It just screams a Canadian production. And if you've watched anything like the CW shows, Supergirl, that kind of thing, it's all kind of like that. And this movie has that kind of like that TV budget feel to it. This, the special effects here feel like they've come out of an episode of a CW show about something, you know, a supernatural kind of CW show. So if you've watched movies or TV shows like Supernatural, for example, this feels like it's kind of like an offshoot of that. Certainly in regard to its kind of production value and stuff. I think the issue I have, another issue I have with this movie is the actual threat. This kind of this entity is very ill-defined. You know, the movie's kind of going on, and ultimately it is a possession movie at the end of the day. But it's trying to have all these kind of like this kind of backstory in regards to what it actually wants and its MO and its kind of history going back and stuff. But I just feel like it's just very vague and kind of ill-defined and just not well executed in regards to telling us as an audience what's actually kind of going on. It just seems to be a lot of kind of like hokum, a lot of kind of mumbo jumbo about stuff which kind of sounds cool but doesn't really mean anything. Then we have these kind of flashbacks with this kind of coven of witches, and it looks way too modern. You know, we're meant to believe these scenes are happening a long time ago, but it looks like people are just dressed up in costumes, and which they obviously are. But yeah, there's just kind of like some of the production values here are a little bit kind of ropey. The kind of the last act of the movie is kind of where we see the kind of the real horror elements to it. And it's that kind of, it's the typical kind of like CGI enhancements in regards to making kind of someone look scary. It's a mixture of practical and kind of CGI. But again, it's low budget TV kind of style CGI that I just feel looks a little on the weaker side. So the plot itself, I feel is as I say, ill-defined, but not bad necessarily. It's just, I mean, again, first time screenwriter. This needed to have someone else go over it, I think, and okay, so what are audiences going to get out of this? Are we going to kind of take the, you know, are we looking at the kind of the narrative flow for the audience? Because I don't think they are. It just seems like lots of kind of things are sort of introduced, and then it's kind of like, yeah, well, that just sounds like it's cool. We'll throw this kind of love interest in it, and nothing will really come of it, and you know, it just seems like a waste of a character, but we kind of need to have like a guy in there doing something, you know, I don't know. It just seems like this is obviously the first kind of movie from both screenwriter and director, and it really feels like that. So maybe we'll see an improvement kind of going forward. Overall, this movie in itself is not necessarily a bad film, but it's just very lackluster. There's nothing special. I think the supernatural elements here are, nothing is really done with them. It's not particularly kind of interesting. Its big saving grace here, though, is the two main actors, I think, do a fabulous job of portraying these kind of sisters, which I think carries this movie from being, you know, otherwise completely forgettable and bad to at least, you know, somewhat kind of watchable for those character moments. But for those who want a kind of a horror film with an interesting premise, it ain't here. So 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.